All right, everybody. So today on the podcast, we have fan favorite, Geoffrey Verity Schofield. And in the comment section, fan favorite, AlphaDestiny, also known as Alex Leonidas. How you doing, man?
Doing amazing. How are you, Dave?
Doing well. So I'm glad we got to get you on, man, because I've had people in the comment section say for years, you got to get them on, you got to get them on. And sometimes it's just a matter of like, maybe I want to, I just don't even know how to connect with the person. Here we have a mutual connection with Jeff. And actually, I think we have a mutual connection. You know, Toby Adler?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So he and I went to college together. Definitely one of the freakiest naturals I've seen from a strength standpoint. And I see him. So people who don't know that this guy was deadlifting 675. I feel like maybe for reps, but at least for one in the college, like 20, 21 years old. Very much believe he's natural. I mean, I've seen him that size since, like I said, he was young. So unless this kid was like juicing and consistently juicing the same amount to say the same size for that all these years, I definitely believe it. So check out his stuff just to see some crazy strength feats.
Yeah, it's always cool when you see someone in real life and they get on the internet. It's like, wow, I know that guy. And they're putting up amazing feats of strength. And you know for a fact that they're the real deal, and you see their journey over many years.
So, I mean, I think people watching probably know both of you guys, but Alex, I think you've been on since what, 2016 or so, 15, 16?
I started making videos in 2013,
Okay.
but it was very on and off. Wasn't full time. I would say 2016 is when I started getting serious. So that's why people know me from that era. Before it was like very fringe community.
Yeah. And you probably won't like this, but the way I first heard about you was through Jason Blaha. So, he was making the videos and everything. And
yeah, there was a lot of clowning back then.
A lot of back and forth. Yeah. I don't know if I've actually talked to him more recently, and it's been very normal. I know there was definitely a period of time where, like you said, a lot of clowning, a lot of nonsense back and forth. But I think a lot of people have calmed down from that era. So
I think the whole community has calmed down as a whole.
Yeah.
Let bygones be bygones. Let's just focus on what's in front of us, what's important. That's it. Give good information.
For sure. So, and for everybody listening, as always, we start with a charity donation. And for this one, we're going to be sticking with Operation Smile. So they help children with cleft lip and palate surgeries. And as always, we will have a link down below if anybody else wants to help out with that. So let's see here. So I think one of the major topics that I wanted to talk about, and that I think we've all kind of talked about, that maybe you coined, was bear mode. I don't know if that was you, and then Jeff Nippard talked about that. Was that you who coined it?
I created the term, and then Jeff really liked it. And it's funny because I planned on renaming bear mode to something else, but because he got really into it, I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna stick with the name. So I have to give credit to Jeff.
Okay. Did you have another name in mind already?
I actually made a video asking my viewers for suggestions, and there were like 10 different ideas.
Oh wow.
I won't disclose it.
Yeah, that was actually, I think the video. So Jeff and I just briefly connected a year or two ago, man, probably closer to 2 years ago. And he just said that he really liked the video, and it was talking about bear mode and all of that. And so awesome. I think it's an interesting topic. And part of me feels like it, well, we'll get into all of it. But Jeff, I know you've been bulking up recently, and you've gained quite a bit, right, in the last year. How much weight have you gained in the last 8 or 9 months?
Let's see. My lowest was like 85 or 86 kilos. So what is that in pounds? Like 185-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I'm like 98.5 kilos in the morning. So like 215, 216.
That's over what time span?
Well, I bounced out of that bottom position like a squat. So it was pretty fast. And I remember one time, because at the end of the diet, that your appetite is up, your hunger is up.
Sure.
And like you could really rebound aggressively. Not that that's always advised, but I did. and I put the food to good use. I remember one time I ate a whole 12-inch pizza, and halfway through eating it, I ordered another one because I knew I was just
right.
Damn.
Pizza consumption was just,
Sure.
And so, not that I advocate always, you don't have to eat shitty foods and you shouldn't eat shitty foods, but you can have more dietary flexibility, let's put it that way, when you are gaining.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I'm up, 30-ish pounds or so.
Wow.
So, and, I feel good. I put on a good amount of strength, still nothing impressive, but enough of that gain was lean body mass that I'm actually happy with it.
Yeah.
You see some people bulk and then they gain nothing.
Right.
Like they just fat and they cut down and it's like, oh, well, shit, that was all. That was a waste.
Right.
And I think, I haven't gone above 20%. That's sort of my personal cap where I don't I could go, I've gone up to maybe 22, 23 because I was, 212 like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I was not as I didn't have any vascularity, any biceps vein, any definition anywhere.
I didn't realize you were that heavy previously.
Yeah. I've bulked and cut before. It's just sort of how I've always done things. And so I've been up to 210, 212, but it was it was a fluffy state of existence.
Right.
Even compared to now. And that's just how it works. Like you go up to a peak body weight heavier than you've ever been before. And then, you either recomp or you main gain or you eventually cut down. And then every time you hit a new body weight, you're slightly better looking, better body composition at that same weight. And that's probably the best way to track progress.
You're about 3 to 5 pounds away from my heaviest ever was like 218 to 220. That was definitely a fluffy state of existence for sure. But I hit my strongest numbers then, or at least close. I've since hit like random PRs here and there at a lighter body weight. But as you alluded to, though, because you're, I think, how many years into training now? 7?
7, yeah.
Yeah. So when I did it, it was like 12 years in, maybe even 13 years in. So it was kind of like a last ditch effort. Like, let's see what I can gain 40 pounds, over 2 years. I took my time. And when I cut down, I pretty much netted nothing. So that was when I basically called it. I was like, you know what? I don't know if it makes sense to do that anymore. But I do think that for your first, let's say 10 years or so, it definitely makes sense and will probably be the fastest way to, hitting your peak potential.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's I think I wasted quite a bit of time from cutting too much and trying to maintain too lean of a physique. Because I maintained not under 10%, but near 10%, like 10 to 11% with like veins all in my abs and like glutes starting to come in and not stage condition, but like kind of getting there, right? Like
Yeah.
your face starts to get gaunt and just you start to notice weird veins, like the cross veins in the biceps, where it's not just that one vein, but it's
right.
It's ridiculous veins. And I maintained that condition for like 6 months or something.
Wow.
But I didn't make any progress.
Sure.
And I didn't feel.
You kind of regressed, right?
Well, I regressed from my previous strength before that, but I kind of just flatlined the entire time.
Okay.
Just sort of treading water, basically.
And then Alex, what's the heaviest you've bulked up to?
Like if we're talking about a bloated state versus
just like the heaviest you've been.
Like on a scale period, like 191.
Wow. Okay. And you're how tall?
5'5.5".
Yeah. So that's a big, big boy.
I was very fluffy,
Yeah.
That's why you got to do the illusion strategies to look leaner than you actually are, grow out your beard, all that good stuff.
Right.
But I think, like Jeff said, you got to have a range that you're not going to exceed. And I think 20% is a good cap for most people.
Yeah.
Really going beyond that point is if you're searching for a strength PR and you just don't care. You're like, you know what? If I got to gain 5 more pounds of body fat, but it's going to add that last 5 pounds of my bench, okay, fine.
Yeah.
It might not be worth the trade-off, but at least you'll get your number.
Right. No, I think that's very reasonable. And then I know, I don't remember the time you did. I mean, I think it was recently you had cut down to like 145-ish. Is that right?
145 dry. So that's like with the water protocol and everything. So it's not how you're going to be every single day.
Yeah. So your walking weight would be like in the 150s then?
Yeah, like 150 exactly.
Yeah. And how long have you been lifting total now?
Oh, a long time, over a decade.
Okay. So do you feel, because that's one of the things I will often talk about. I mean, obviously it's recognized that, your first 5 to 7 years, you're going to get almost all of it and then it slows down. Do you feel like at this point, you're able to make net progress, like not, hey, I'm picking a new unique exercise and gaining strength, but like I'm actually putting on new muscle mass?
Absolutely, to the point where my expectations are higher than ever before. I'll say this, I don't believe in the natural limit.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that progress will continue just at a very slow rate, such a small rate that you might as well call it a limit. So if
Sure.
you're adding 5 pounds a year to your bench press, that's nothing really, but it adds up year after year. If you
Sure.
do that between 25 till 40 years old without getting injured, that's a lot of PRs. And, you know, you see those muscle gaining charts and they say after 5, 10 years, you're gaining so minuscule amounts that you might as well not calculate it. Why? I find it's worth calculating if you actually plan on doing this for decades at a time. If this is a short-term pursuit, of course, it's not going to be worth it.
Mhm.
So it's the years that add up where you see the physical changes. Obviously, you know, from 2022 till 2023 or even 2024, most of us naturals are going to look relatively the same, maybe some minor improvements. To say there's going to be no progress, I don't believe that. And I'm still making gains after all this time. And the longer you train, the more you optimize your stuff.
Do you
Make it
measure that
smarter.
mostly through strength progress? Do you take, like, I know Jeff and I are both pretty big on muscular measurements. Is that something that you take as well?
Measurements and strength progression. But
Mhm.
really, the progressive overload, you have to trust the process because that ensures the measurement will go up. If you take your bench press from 315 to 350, chances are something's going to go up in your body, whether it be your delts, your triceps, your shoulders.
Yeah.
There's going to be a minor increase. You'll never be the exact same measurement in most cases.
Yeah, well, no, I agree. If assuming that you take an exercise, again, that's not new, right? You have all those initial neurological adaptations. You take a long-standing exercise and you're gaining strength for reps over time. That's like the almost like the fine way that I can pretty much guarantee you're growing, right? I mean, that's almost has to happen from increased muscle mass.
Like Jeff always says, it's objective,
Yeah.
you know? And the goals that he set this year, you're going to see the size reflected in that, guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
that's, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So I think that some people are sort of pessimistic about the gains you can keep making from like year 5 to year 10. Because I've seen some people, even content creators who I respect, where they make it seem like past 3 years, you're basically making tiny improvements or nothing at all. And I haven't found that to be the case because, you know, it's easy to get your newbie gains, but then like your intermediate gains, a lot of people mess up, right? And so they get the newbie gains because everyone gets them, like you'll get them doing a lot of different stuff. But then once you're an intermediate, you actually have to optimize stuff. You have to actually be very mindful of your progression. And, you know, past like 10 years, that's where things are going to slow if you've been optimizing things. But like in that 5 to 10 year window, I think you can still make pretty good progress. And then like even past 10 years, you know, there's always like, in terms of just how much muscle mass you have, like there are some areas that, you know, who trains their hip flexors, right? Like, there's probably a decent amount of muscle mass.
Neck gains,
Maybe,
right? We'll talk about that too.
like your psoas and your TFL and all those little, like someone said, oh, I have my TFL, which is like a hip flexor on the outside of the hip. I was doing front squats and it like poked out of the side and someone's like, what the hell is that? And it's just like a muscle, a weird muscle that I have from running, right? Because that's used, you know, running is a lot of hip flexion, whereas lifting is a lot of hip extension, right? Squats, deadlifts, etc. Who trains their hip flexors? Almost no one, but you know, that might be, I don't know, 500 grams of muscle mass,
right?
worth of taking, right?
Yeah. I think it is interesting that there are a lot of people so pessimistic about that 5 to 10 years. And I think maybe some people would think that I'm pessimistic about that, and I'm definitely not. So I was making significant changes until about year 12 or 13. However, I started at 12 years old. So I don't have the same reference, right? Because there'd be,
Oh, wow.
like, it's not the same, like you're just going to gain from puberty. right?
Hmm.
And so you can't really compare. I think if you're starting at, let's say, 18 to 20, then yeah, at 10 years, it's going to be substantially slower. But 5 to 10, I mean, I don't know anybody who has stayed consistent who has not looked dramatically different at 10 years than 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, almost across the board, you're going to see that.
Yeah, and
That's a
another
fact.
thing is like the more muscle you gain naturally, the more impressive those little bits add up, right? Because you're getting close to your potential, and so you're adding muscle, and you're getting close to like that area where you look pretty freaky.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of look into that, you get into that gray zone where it's like, oh, is he natural, is he not natural?
Mm-hmm.
And then you every little pound you add is more impressive than the last pound, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what's going to make people look good in a lean state, or shredded rather.
Mm-hmm.
It's training for 10 years, getting so much muscle that once you reveal what's underneath the body fat, like, you're ascetic, but it takes time to get to that point. You
Yeah.
tell a novice lifter to try and do that, they're going to just look shriveled up, like a Bruce Lee kind of physique. So
Right.
those little pounds, that makes a difference.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because like my first year, I gained, so I gained 30 pounds my first year of lifting, of which, I mean, the obviously decent amount of that was muscle. But I started at the time 5'11", 130 pounds, right? So I went from like anorexically skinny to like kind of normal for a high school student. And so I got comments like, "Oh, you're looking like bigger," but it wasn't in any way impressive, right? But when you're going and you're now 10 years in, if you put on 3 pounds of muscle, like, it's like, oh, wow, well, you're actually looking bigger, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. As far as like comments from others, like that's certainly not something I think you should focus on. But my experience was that, people would want the abs and everything, and I can very much relate to that, especially my younger self. Like, that's all I cared about. But consistently, I would get much more compliments from men and women when I had clothes on, which is obviously most of my life, and when I was bulked up. So like when I went to dental school, that was like my first time getting up to like 190 plus. And I remember, you got all like the social gatherings the first year and everything, and I'd be out at the bar, and like people were grabbing my arms, and I was like, what is going on here? And I was the softest I'd ever been at that point in my life, like easily the softest I'd ever been. But it was like a lot of comments. And I don't know if you're experiencing that, Jeff, but like now that you're heavier, most people just see you as a bigger individual.
Yeah, I think you can kind of walk that line between, like, I've seen natural bodybuilders where it's like in clothes and then on stage, and because they're like 5, 6, 7, whatever percent body fat, the difference between clothed and like perfect stage lighting, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
is ridiculous. But that's not how most people function most of the time, right? Like, you're not under perfect lighting and unclothed. You're wearing clothes, and I would say as long as you don't get sloppy, you'll look bigger, right? But like the moment you get a belly, or you
Mm-hmm.
lose your abs or whatever, but it's not even about abs. Like, it's just as long as you keep your lines somewhat in check and you don't get blowed up and go overboard and go past that roughly 20% mark, maybe 22, 23%, then you'll just look big and look jacked.
It's the difference between being fluffy and chubby. And when you have the muscle mass, that extra cushion just makes it look like it's all muscle.
Well, that's something you talk about quite a bit, right, Alex? Is like how to, I mean, you mentioned like the beard and maybe certain clothes, like how to still look pretty good and not look sloppy, even if you're at that 18 to 20% range.
Yeah. And that comes down to just being jacked overall. Like, if you have a 17-inch neck, then you gain some fat, it climbs up to, slightly under 18. Is anyone going to look at you and say, wow, that's a fat neck? Or are they going to assume, no, that guy's jacked, I don't want to go near him? Just to say, like, when you go to these expos and you see these bodybuilders in real life and they are peeled, 9 out of 10 times they look tiny, just walking around.
Sure.
I've seen them in real life, and I've been shredded myself, and I can tell you that I look like I didn't even lift in clothes. All my tailored clothing was floating in it. It's really an illusion. You take your shirt off, you got the lights on you, That's the only time you actually look big and impressive.
Yeah.
You put 15, 20 pounds more on that frame, same person here, exact muscle, all of a sudden you look big. And
Yeah.
that's what's sabotaging a lot of guys. They're way too lean, especially what we were talking about before with the years of training. They don't even have that. So if you
Right.
haven't put 5, 10 years of training and now you're trying to be 9% body fat, what do you think the outcome is going to be if even natural bodybuilders who get to that status look small?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's tough. It's a tough topic because like you're obviously influenced by like a lot of people who are very enhanced and then they're lean all the time. But I remember, I mean, I'm sure he doesn't watch this, so I guess I can say his name, but somebody I went to school with, this kid Justin. So we had two Justins in our group, and one was this, pretty big guy, and then the other one was who we called Little Justin. And he had on his Instagram, like you'd think this guy was a pro. Like, I mean, legitimately, like it was, but he was probably 5'6" or 7", 145 pounds, probably 5'7", 145. And he was relatively skinny in person. And I think some of the pictures were after I knew him, so maybe he had gained some muscle. The point is, there was such a dramatic difference in how he looked on his Instagram pictures versus in person. And it's kind of like, well, what do you want to look good for? Do you want to look good in real life and like walking around, or for, whatever people you're posting for? And I guess if it's what you do for a living, if it's how you make money, maybe that's going to be a decision maker there. But for most people, I almost never recommend people even get below beach lean, not to like, if that's your goal for whatever reason, I think it's fine. I just think you need to you need to think about why that's your goal. Because in my experience, for most people, it doesn't end up being a net benefit. If you want to do it, maybe like Jeff, maybe when you're done, you're going to get there to compare it to the last time you were there to see. But I can't imagine you're going to stick around there very long.
Yeah, no way. It's like I have refused to work with some clients if they're like, yeah, I just want to get shredded. And I'm like, okay, well, why? Like, is there a show or something? Like, no, I just want to get shredded. Like, I just want to see what I look like when I'm shredded. And they're like 25% body fat. I've barely lifted weights. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to work with you. Like, this is just, no, like, this is not going to be good for anyone involved. That's a dumb fucking goal. Like, stop. No.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm sure a lot of coaches would be happy, like, all right, just, PayPal me the money. Let's do this.
Sure, yeah.
You're going to suffer for a while and you're going to look like shit at the end, but like, let's do this. But like, I just, if I see someone and their goal is just counterproductive, and I know it's counterproductive, they just don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tell them up front, like, no, that's not really going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to sign off on that. And I have noticed a lot of people, probably influenced from social media, they want to cut, they want to get lean, even when they are already pretty lean and their goal physique has a lot more muscle. And, I made that same mistake where like you keep chasing this leanness and it doesn't really give you any dividends, especially past a certain point. Like if someone wants to get down to low teens or something, fair enough. But if they're chasing the shreds and they're natural and they still want to be gaining muscle, I mean, it's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I think the body dysmorphia that they might have as a result of following these influencers makes it worse. Not to mention the fact that if they're going to take a physique update picture of themselves, it'll be a selfie with their crappy phone, and they don't even have the setup that these pros have. So it's not like you're talking about a DSLR with 3-point lighting. They're probably going to take a picture in their bathroom, and maybe they're already lean enough. But because they're not photographers or they don't have the right guy to set them up, now they think they're fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
That's me.
So one thing I would say though is, and I might maybe have a different opinion than you guys on this, but there's to some degree, I think it's also not just about like what is actually looking better, but just what's worth it for you. So like you could take this from like a lifestyle and money standpoint, right? So maybe you would make more money, and I'm all about like going after very lofty goals, but maybe there's a level of, okay, this income is achievable, but if you think about how you'd have to work 100 hours per week and not spend time with your family or whatever it is, it's actually not worth it. You would make more money, but the net is worse, right, for your life. And I actually would say that I do think a leaner physique is more aesthetic, And for if you can have the muscle mass while being lean, I believe that is a better look. It's more desirable by the vast majority of the population. And I don't get too much into like the male self-help stuff, but I do think like if you look at the photos that women are like staring at most of the time, it is a lean but also muscular physique. It's usually not a guy who's 20% body fat. I mean, that's just when you look at like what is consumed, in my opinion. However, I just think it's more a matter of, as we've been saying here, what does it take to maintain that? And for many naturals, how much skinnier are you going to look overall? So I'm not trying to say that there's no downsides to being heavier or like softer. I can understand and relate, especially to younger men who want to be really lean. It's just for a lot of you have to consider, what is that going to cost? And not like a take the easy route, but just it genuinely, when you've done the cost benefit analysis, it might not be worth it.
Yeah, I think it also depends what stage you're at in your life. Maybe you've been that bulky guy throughout your 20s, and now you just want to be lean in your 30s, look aesthetic. And I would agree to your point that being lean, you'll look better with your shirt off. Your face is more defined.
Mm-hmm.
It is more aesthetic. Let's keep it real. But some people aren't trying to impress girls, just to say, not saying that that's a motivation, but they want optimal muscle gains, right? Or just look as jacked as possible and not have to suffer as much in a disciplined sense, because there is a trade-off, like you just mentioned, right? It's harder to maintain a lower body fat. Whereas if they were to creep up a little bit, still defined, but maybe you don't have veins popping out everywhere, maybe they'll be a little bit more happy. So I guess it depends on the person and where they're at, and the training experience too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think in some ways, the obesity epidemic, if you want to call it that, has sort of caused a very lean physique to look more desirable, right? Because if someone wants to, they want to lose weight, often they want to go all the way. And so, they're more likely to follow people who are super shredded. And those tend to be the enhanced guys. And so, their sort of standard is maybe leaner than it should be. And then, yeah, it does take more discipline to maintain a very lean physique, even if you are enhanced, right? It's not like you just inject and then boom, you can stay 8 or 9% body fat year round without discipline. Like, it still does require discipline. And so, I'll notice I'll get more likes on Instagram when I'm lean, or if I post like a throwback when I'm, hypervascular and lots of definition and stuff like that. So it is more desired, I would say. But I personally, maybe it's because I associate progress with a slightly higher body fat percentage, and I like progress. I like getting stronger. I like gaining muscle, and I feel okay at 11%. It's not like I feel bad. I'm slightly hungrier. My appetite, needs to be suppressed with caffeine and fiber and protein, etc. I have to be mindful about getting in my steps and whatever. So it does require more discipline, but I feel fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I can't make progress
nearly
as well as when I'm beefed up, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the trade-off.
Right. Yeah. I was finding the picture. You probably can't see it very well here, but like on my Instagram. And so, yeah, it's not showing up well at all. But in one of these, I'm like pretty soft, and in one, I'm pretty lean. And I made a joke. I was like, I don't know why I'm frowning in the first one, because I was probably a lot happier and I was eating more. But there was a girl who, I don't even know her. She commented on the picture and she was like, yeah, don't go back to the first one. Like, second one looks better. I was like, yeah, I mean, that is just kind of how it is online. Right. So I think, you guys probably relate to how it's changed over the years, but like for you personally, it's a lot about what you're going after. And you'll see this a lot. Like, I have patients who, maybe like we have like a surgery. And so they're constantly focusing on other people's smiles while they're recovering, because it's like what you're focusing on. When I wanted to be very lean in high school, there could be somebody who was not that muscular, but they had abs. And that was such a focus of mine. And I actually specifically recall there was a group of lifters who probably, I'm guessing, were in their 30s or 40s at the time when I was in high school. And the one owner of the gym was like very clearly like juiced to the gills, but like, again, shredded, but very big. He had a friend who, honestly, if I think back to it, probably was like 220, muscular, definitely a physique that I would want now. But in my high school self, just had no appreciation for that, right? Because he wasn't lean. Fast forward, and I remember being on a trip in California with my family. Like I was probably like 22 or so, and there was this at the hotel gym. There was like a trainer or whatever, and I just saw him as like so skinny. I was like, "Who are you going to tell how to train?" Like again, very probably cocky mindset. And he was probably 40 and 150, 155, but very, very lean. And my dad, who was, somewhat overweight, probably only again cared about being lean for, at that point in his life, saw this guy had veins down his arms. And he thought that was like, oh, but look at his look how his jacked his forearms are, right? And it's so much about what you're going for at that time you can appreciate in others, even if it's different than another time in your life.
That's so true, man. And in my experience too, when I was in high school, being shredded, people would ask me to flex my arm to see all the cuts. And they were like, "Wow, you're big, bro." But I was like $120, And then there was this other dude who was actually muscular, but no one paid him any attention because he was a little bit fluffier.
Yeah.
But I bet if those same people were 10 years older, they would appreciate it more. So if you're a serious lifter, you recognize when someone else is in that bubble. Otherwise, if you're just some recreational guy, you're looking at the vein. Wow, you got a great physique. But it's like everyone wants to look like Brad Pitt from Fight Club. But he's what, 6'1", 160? Is he really that big?
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you do want to talk about, like we said, I don't think that getting motivation from women is the best way to go about this. But I think, high school, college, it was about the lean guy. I can tell you that, now being 30, there's significantly more attention from like older women, meaning like late 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, just from a guy being muscular. Like I think if you were to like poll your average like 35-year-old woman or 30-year-old woman, they'd probably say that they would prefer a man who has actually looks relatively big than like a skinny boy with abs, right? I think that would be probably like a general consensus for the most part.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's I think going with what women want is, I mean, ideally probably not the best motivation, but let's be serious. If you're a dude and you're, I don't know, 18, 19, 20, even like into your 20s, like that's going to be one of the biggest reasons. Like people don't say it, but like most people, that's a big reason why they train. That's a big reason why they're in the gym. And, it's maybe not the best reason to keep going. It might not sustain your motivation and discipline and such, but it's, if that gets you in the gym and that gets you lifting, fair enough.
Yeah. If it gets you started.
Yeah. As long as you keep the habits after, then you're going to set some higher goals for yourself, and also not fall into the trap that you have to be shredded in order to attract these women. You can still, like, if you're going for that aesthetic physique, you can still be around 12% body fat, no problems, and dress well, take care of yourself, obviously.
Yeah. Like if you can't get laid at 20% body fat, it's not the fat. Like
it's definitely you.
Yeah, like, and I think some people think that their life is going to be like radically different if they get lean. No, like you'll be the guy at the party, in the corner who's like, but I have abs. Like, these guys are drinking alcohol as people do, but I have abs.
Yeah.
And, I have a friend who's
like put a premium on them, but sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I have a friend who's shredded right now, and he's been that way for like a year and a half. And whenever we go to parties, he's the only guy who doesn't eat or drink. He has absolutely nothing. He's there at the table like this. And I'm like, bro, just,
Yeah, for sure. So Jeff, you alluded to gaining muscle in like, different places as you progress. And Alex, you talked about, neck, and I think we've all talked about neck training. So that is one area that I would say, even after everything stalled for a while, I got started with neck training in 2017. And as I frequently say, I obviously do not have a big neck. However, it is bigger than it was, right? And so at the same weight, which I always say is very important, same weight, same body fat-ish, I've gained just over an inch on my neck. Now, some people have seen much more, 2+ inches. Mine kind of leveled off after that first inch or so. But when did you get started with it, Alex?
I made my first video on neck training in 2013, but I
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
actually doing it like because it was a 4-way neck machine, and I would use it once in a blue moon, but
Hmm.
because I had heard that it was good for field athletes, but I didn't actually pursue it. But then years later, I became friends with someone who was a big believer of it, and I started doing more research, and I came across guys like Mike Machine Bruce, who did like a 300-pound neck extension for a double, and it inspired me. Then I looked at the old school strongmen; they all trained their necks. I was like, "Yo, I got to get in on this." So, 2015 is when I actually started taking it seriously.
Okay.
300 pounds.
Yeah, dude.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and he ended up
Oh,
getting a
man.
concussion too. Like he flipped off the bench.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What
Yeah.
what is yours? Do you measure yours at the Adam's apple or below, or where do you measure, Alex?
Like right here. Yeah, a little bit above the Adam's apple, or
Okay.
directly on it. I mean, it's gonna be a relatively similar measurement if you're
Yeah.
in this range over here, right?
Hmm. And what is yours now? Do you know?
I don't know. It's probably 16 and a half.
Okay.
It used to be a lot bigger, but
Sure.
one thing I'll tell you is that when you stop training your neck, it's gonna shrink.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely found I had some like jaw issue, and for a while I just was like not doing any neck, even like 3 months, and it definitely regressed faster than I would have expected. Not to like any like it still maintains some, obviously like any muscle, if you're at least always supporting with your neck, so there's going to be something. But yeah, I did found, and then you see that with like some wrestlers too, like high school wrestlers, they stop wrestling, their neck is like 1 or 2 inches smaller later, right? So
Yeah, but the difference is they go from like a 20-inch neck to 18. So it's still above average,
yeah, no, for sure. And Jeff, what's yours up to now?
Almost 17. At the smallest point, like around the Adam's apple.
Right.
I have a lot of lower neck, if that makes sense.
Well, because your traps insert so high, right?
Yeah, my traps are just, I mean, I don't know. Like I've been chewing through your yoke playlist, Alex, and that's been really helpful with traps and neck. And yeah, but my traps have, I'm definitely blessed in that regard because, yeah, they insert like here basically.
Right.
All the way up. So, it's just like a sailing ship. So you have a sail, and the farther it attaches out, the bigger the sail is going to be.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's a gifted area, but like I also have gotten them way bigger from the weighted stretch, from the power shrugs, from the
Yeah.
all that stuff you've been talking about. It works. I haven't done that many rack pulls above the knee, but I've done a few, and then I've held them in the stretch position. I've done like 6 or 7 plates for like 20 or 30-second holds. That is tough. That is. I mean, it's not like 1,000 pounds, but it's still like way more than I can deadlift, and that seems to have definitely caused some growth. And it's just an isometric hold, right? I'm not even shrugging it because it's way more than I could shrug even with a cheat. But it's just, it's so much weight that it seems to have caused some growth there. And, in terms of the measurement of the neck at the base, it's like, 19 and a half to 20.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a pretty big difference, because mine at the Adam's apple, and again, I'm pretty light right now. I'm like 185. So at the Adam's apple, it's like 16 and a quarter. And then at the base, though, it's like maybe an inch more, like 17 and a quarter. So for you to go up that much, it's a pretty big change.
Like it's like 3 inches more or something.
Wow.
And then if I really like
Yeah.
take down, I bet I could get like 22 or something.
Jeez.
Yeah, with a pump too.
Yeah, right.
All of that.
That is one thing I noticed, like when you finish neck training and you have a pump, like I just remember thinking like you just look more powerful, right? Like you just have that look. And I remember, again, going back to high school, there was a kid, Russell. I remember him from when we were like young, and you'd see like the yearbook pictures, right? So it's just here up. And you just looked at this kid and you're just like, he just looks like he would beat a lot of people in a fight, right? Like it just was that powerful look. And, if you've got a total pencil neck, it's just kind of like a weaker look. And it'll also make everything look bigger. Like Channing Tatum, so many people think Channing Tatum is this like jacked dude. He's not actually that muscular. When he's lean, he's like 170, 175, but he's got this ridiculous neck.
Yeah, even if you look at some old school photos from the 1920s, the black and white shots, you have guys in their suit and they didn't used to smile back then in the photos. They're stern, but you see these thick necks, right? And it's like, oh, damn, did this guy do bodybuilding before it was even invented? Was he a manual labor guy? Like you automatically look big just from here because that's all you're going to see, right?
Yeah. I think I think it's the lead singer of Mice and Men. I just remember seeing like their photo album, whatever, and his neck is huge. And I looked him up, and he's actually pretty skinny. Some people they just have that, right? So
yeah, it's a menacing power look.
What's that, Jeff?
There was one singer, I forget, it was some rock band, and he had a freaking huge, like it must have been 19 or 20 inches, and it was from headbanging.
I've heard that. Yeah. I know who you're talking. But he was heavy, right?
He was pretty developed. Yeah.
Is it the guy from Cannibal Corpse?
There's one guy I've seen who he was kind of fat, but his neck was like absurd. I mean, it was just like it just like a worm. Yeah. I did want to ask you, Alex, about the way you go about training, because that is something I think Jeff and I, the last time he was on, we talked about how humbling a neck harness is if you're doing neck extensions compared to holding plates. I never liked holding plates because I felt like subconsciously I just couldn't not help out with my arms. So I could use 45 plus pounds. I mean, I think you've done like multiple plates, and then I'll put on a neck harness and it's like 20 pounds is very hard. So I don't know if you've had that experience too.
Yeah. And the reason that has to do with the strength curve, where you place the plate on your forehead, and the arms plus the abs. You'll notice a lot of guys who complain that they're not growing, even though they induce progressive overload, is that their form got progressively worse.
Sure.
And you can literally see it through the clips. They're crunching, they're doing this pullover motion. The arms are key, eh? If they're doing this flapping, then that's why they're not making gains. And it's just more strict. There's no, you're doing what your neck is actually supposed to do.
Yeah.
So in most cases, a harness is going to be a far better choice. But obviously, the plate exercises are really good to build your base. I think it's only when you get past a certain amount, especially if you don't have those the rubber plates, because now you got to grab with the rubbers. You can grab on the inside, right? But with the cast iron, you got to be a lot more grippy.
Yeah.
So that's going to have a natural tendency of, muscling it up.
Do you use that at all anymore? You're totally harnessed now.
I'm all harnessed these days, but actually, no. Sometimes I'll do the plate neck curl, but I have access to the best harness. I'm gonna take advantage.
Yeah,
you can get cable weight on that. So
you said you use a cable with it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you just hook it up around the cable. Do you have something at home?
I have a home cable setup with a loading pin.
Okay.
So it's actually 1-to-1 if I were to do it with regular plates in terms of the load being used.
Do you find that's just like smoother than plates, or like what benefits do you get from that?
It's smoother and probably safer. For example, if you want to do the neck curl without that, you're going to have to lean back like this, right? And when you flex, there's no real tension for the most part. But with the cable, you can set it up high. So you can get on your knees, and the direction of resistance is different.
Interesting.
So you'll get a better contraction and range of motion.
After about 2-3, I guess this was probably 3 years of neck training, and I had stalled for a while. I thought, okay, well, more sets is not really doing it. Like I was at one point doing 3 sets of neck curls, 3 sets of neck extensions 3 times a week. That's the most I was doing, and I just wasn't getting any more progress. Excuse me. And so I was like, well, let me try actually like a different movement then. So let me try side flexions. So then I added that. I was like hanging off the bed, and I would just, do that. And I was surprised to find that despite the progression with the side flexions, it didn't add anything. And this was after I don't know, 6 months. So I just went back to the normal extensions and curls. Have you done much with the side flexions, and have you noticed a benefit there?
I have, and I did notice benefits, but I believe it's because it simply increased the volume. As the reason why you probably didn't see additional gains is because it's the same function. That the sternocleidomastoid is not doing anything different when you flex here versus here.
Yeah.
You know, so that's people will get better gains from it. You know, you can argue that it's a slightly different movement pattern, and the strength curve is slightly different, and you're in a fatigue state, so you don't have to lift as much. But from a pure hypertrophy standpoint, it's not necessary. You can get a massive neck with neck extension, neck curl, be done with it.
Yeah.
Plus your shrugs, which compounds it all.
Do you think the shrugs are actually adding from neck standpoint, or are you just the overall that yoke because of the traps?
Mostly the traps, but I think there's a research paper that came out last year proving that shrugs work similar muscles to when you do neck extension. Just like you're going to get some activation.
Okay.
It might not be optimal if you only do that, but I do think there's a connection. Like when you do neck extensions, you'll feel your traps, and when you do shrugs, you'll feel your neck. So they both feed into each other, but just the backside.
Okay. So that actually goes right into the next topic very well with partials. And I know you've done plenty of partials and like very heavy weighted work, Alex. And one of the things that Jeff and I also talked about last time was when it comes to certain muscle groups like calves and traps, where to get the full range of motion, you'd have to like the truly full, like unweighted range of motion, you'd have to use so much less weight. And we're often talking, hearing full range of motion, whatever weight you have to drop to, that's what you should do to get full range of motion. I've done partials, I've done full range of motion. And as you obviously know, you can use so much more if you allow even just like a 20 to 30% drop in the actual range of motion. And it seems like that's what you favor when it comes to trap work. Would you say that's accurate?
For the traps, yeah, because it's mostly the weighted stretch, so there is no, and the range of motion itself of a shrug is not that high to begin with.
Right.
And I find like you can still get a nice contraction when you do things like power shrugs. And just looking anecdotally at some athletes, like Olympic weightlifters, a lot of it is just explosive movements. The thing is, you're still getting a full range of motion. It's just not strict. It's explosive, right?
Okay, so you're still you're maybe using momentum to get up there, but you would prefer that over not using momentum and losing range of motion.
Right. And
okay,
keep in mind, I wouldn't exclusively do that. I would recommend mixing in both just to be safe. So you do your power shrugs and then strict repetitions right after. And then the partial deadlifts, it's to bias the upper traps more because you're getting a greater weighted stretch. Everyone says that deadlifts grow your traps, but there's no shrugs involved. So if I'm doing a block pull that's 2 to 4 inches above the ground and my back angle isn't too different, and I'm getting some higher volume in there, well, a lot of that's going to be directed to the upper traps. Like my posterior chain won't be the limiting factor anymore. So you're just biasing the area a bit more.
How have you felt with that, Jeff, for you in recent training? I know you've talked a lot about taking things to failure and then continuing on with partials and stretches.
I do think that comparing a partial range of motion but strict versus a full range of motion explosive, I would rather go for the second one pretty much every time. Like if you're doing a strict shrug but you're only getting half range of motion, you're not really getting the same amount of weighted stretch, because you're not really getting that sort of yanking. And I know that sounds bad or like injurious. that's literally what it is.
Yank
right?
the neck as much as possible. Just
I actually was doing that a lot. I did a 6 rep max. With like what probably should have been my 2 rep max. I was like, fuck, I want to getting more reps. But I do think the neck is one area that, probably ideally, like I do a lot of dumb shit and a lot of it I don't post.
Yeah.
But a lot of that dumb shit has gotten me a lot of I can't post it because like, first you have the issue of like the trolls and the people who are beginners and they see that's bad and they've heard that's bad. And so to them, that's bad. But then also like you have to understand that someone's going to copy it and then maybe get hurt because they're not as durable or they don't know how to actually, position themselves to be safe when they're doing a cheated movement. So I don't post a lot of that stuff for both of those reasons. Most of the second one, just because you always have to think about how your content could affect people positively, but also negatively. And I think, cheat reps are a more advanced technique sort of by definition. And, beginners are going to see it, think this is the key to gains. And maybe it might be in the future for them, but it's something they should probably not do, at that time in their lifting career. But I found that, explosive reps, just going very heavy, like heavier than you think you should go, and definitely heavier than other people think you should go. I saw a comment the other day because I just did that cheat reps video yesterday, and one of the comments was like, I would never be able to do this in public. I'd be so embarrassed to be doing a power shrug. And like a small part of me thought about responding like, well, just stop being a little bitch and do it, right? But like the sort of mild mannered Jeff came out and was like, well, like you can work up to it. Cheating is a range. You can cheat slightly a little bit. And I do think the traps are sort of a unique muscle group in a way because they're super durable. They can tolerate a ton of volume. They're basically designed to handle that weighted stretch, right? Same with the lats in the top position, where like during a row, I mean, I guess you could tear your lat in theory, but it's just so less common than something like a biceps tear or a pec tear or something that I don't think the risk of injury is really that big a deal.
Yeah, the traps can take so much punishment. And if you were to use the same weight stretch philosophy on the pecs, you would tear them guaranteed. So if I load 600 pounds on a camber bar bench, okay, way to stretch, bro, you're screwed.
Right.
But with the traps, like the average person, if they actually work up to it and get 1,000 pounds and they just hold it for like 10 seconds, I guarantee you they're not going to tear their traps. It won't happen. They are so freaking resilient. And that's why they are the exception in the discussion. So, I can't really think of other muscles that you can overload to this extent and use this much cheat form and get away with it. Like it actually has a net benefit, if you ask me. But one thing to keep in mind, I think Jeff kind of just pointed this out, experience level matters. So you don't tell a beginner to go in and do power shrugs. They got to work on the regular version first, get a base. Same thing on their deadlifts. There is no reason for you to do partials and all these advanced movements. Try getting a 4-plate deadlift. Start with that, and maybe you'll be yoked enough. Right. I would say someone who focuses on the basic compounds and isolates their neck will get much better results than the guy who's trying to do weighted stretch overload in his first year of training.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard of a trap tear. I've heard of one lat tear. You see calf tears every once in a while. Certainly biceps and chest would be what's that?
Yeah, I've heard of, I think Kevin Oak tore his lat when deadlifting, and there was another older guy, Nick something or other, again, who was also deadlifting. Yeah. But, on rows or on pull-ups or something like that, lats are pretty damn resilient. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Especially for natties. If you progressively work on your weighted pull-ups, I highly doubt you're going to tear a lat.
Yeah.
Very rare to see.
Yeah. So one of the things that people have been talking about with this weighted stretch, and there's obviously certain movements, we talked about like back exercises, calves and traps, where we kind of accept the partial range of motion at times or some of these cheats. What I've noticed with some of your training, Alex, is that you will also do partials for like presses, which I think is maybe a little bit more controversial. Go ahead.
Yeah, I stopped doing that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. I would recommend accommodating resistance instead, which is still controversial. Okay. But say you have a sticking point on the overhead press towards a lockout, I would prescribe just a paused overhead press, particularly with a close grip, and even doing it with chains. Not a crazy tension, maybe 30 pounds of chains. That'll do much more for you than say a push press or a partial pin press.
Okay. When did you stop the partials?
Like 2018.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay. And you favor chains over bands or either one?
I prefer chains. On paper, you would think that bands are better, but after actually experimenting, no. I found that you get more carryover, and it feels more like straight weight.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually not done anything with chains. I've done bands, decent amount. Part of it is just the accessibility and practicality.
Yeah,
It's pretty easy to bring bands versus 50 pounds of chains or whatever it is. So
true. You got to move them around too. They're heavy. It's annoying. You
yeah,
gotta have
yeah,
the right setup. Bands are a lot more convenient.
yeah. So one area that I don't know if Jeff, are you doing pull-ups right now in your routine? Just like standard pull-ups?
Yeah, weighted pull-ups.
Okay.
That's one of my goals for 2022. So I keep them in, but it's not every session. It's like alternated with rows. And they're all neutral grip at the moment.
And Alex, I know you've had some pretty impressive pull-ups. What are some of your best feats there?
I did a 4-plate weighted pull-up, which is 180 pounds.
Nice.
I've done 95 pounds for 14 repetitions.
Wow.
And 6 one-arm pull-ups.
Holy shit, dude. So yeah, I hit some PRs this year. I did 45 for 15, 100 for 6, and 135 for 3.
That's really good.
Thank you. But I was not even close really to, so I set a left arm, since it's my weak arm, left arm, single arm pull up. And that was one of the only goals throughout all areas of life, not just fitness, that I did not achieve this year. There was like 2 I didn't hit, and that was one of them. And to be honest with you, it didn't feel that close. And I was surprised because 135 for 3, I got it on 3 different occasions. And I would go and I'm like, man, this is like it just feels almost like impossibly hard. And I don't know if it was a technique thing. I mean, again, my body weight is at the time was like 185, so still about what it is now. And like I would pull and I'm like, man, this really doesn't feel too close. And when I would use a machine, like the assisted pull-up machine, I would need about 40 pounds of resistance still, or sorry, like help to get there. I'm like, shit, man, I don't know how I'm gonna get another 40 pounds, of strength. So
that's another grind right there. But I'll recommend you check out the video, The Problem with One Arm Pull-Up by Frank's Movement. And he talks about the leverage aspect of all that and how height and weight plays a role with this too. So you being 185 at what, 6 feet-ish?
6'1", yeah.
There you go. That's not the same as someone like me. And for you, you'd have to raise your absolute strength that much more.
Yeah.
135 for a triple is awesome, but you might have to double that to 6 reps, or go a little bit beyond, But I think it's doable. It's just going to take some time.
I think kind of going back to like where you said, it's something worth it to gain weight, maybe 5 pounds for like to get that bench press. I think realistically, I'd have to lose quite a bit of weight. I think it would be much more likely to come if I were to cut down to like 170 and just get super lean than it would be to gain that much strength, which personally is really not worth it for me. But
if you gain strength for a year and then cut to 170, you could probably pull it off right off, like instantly.
Yeah. I think that weight loss would still be a big requirement though,
Probably more important than the strength, like you said.
Yeah. So
it's either add 15 pounds to pull up or lose it,
Yeah, right. And I noticed that a lot of, maybe not so much like in the bodybuilding world, but in life, a lot of people change their focus as they get older to just kind of like a leaner, healthier physique. I could see at some point in my life being like, yeah, I'll get even leaner and just kind of maintain that. We'll see. I have no idea, but for now, I've kind of put that goal on the back burner, and maybe I'll readdress it. But I am very impressed with people who can do like very heavy weighted pull-ups. It's not something that you really see that much, even among really muscular people. And obviously there's a weight component there, but even if I see some people who are, pretty jacked at like a similar weight, you just don't see people like that many people repping out 2+ plates on a pull-up.
Yeah, it's an ego. I think it's an ego thing. Like you see a lot of IFBB pros on the pull downs,
Mhm.
but then you don't see them. Like maybe they could do pull-ups like with a little bit of added weight, but it's just, doesn't look as impressive as using the stack, I guess,
Mhm.
on pull downs.
It comes down to specificity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, guys. So, I mean, as far as the upcoming year, I don't know if you guys are the type to set goals at the start of the year. I don't like the idea of like a New Year's resolution because I just associate that with everybody who immediately stops. However, I am very big on goal setting, so I do yearly, I guess you could call it New Year's resolutions, but I do yearly set goals, and they're added throughout the year too. It's not like only on January 1st I set these goals, right? They're always progressing. Do you guys have specific goals for the coming year?
Yes. Like I've been lazy with my lower body for quite some time now, and gonna stop doing that.
Okay.
Get them up to 26.5 inches, maybe squat 500 if possible. I don't know what my potential is,
Yeah.
and deadlift at least 600, though I'll probably surpass that. Then the upper body, I want to get beyond 4 plates, because why not? If you're going to be in a calorie surplus, why would you maintain if you regain your previous performance? Push the boundaries a bit. So if I can get 415, 420, I'll be happy.
So you've hit 405 bench, right? I think
Yeah.
I saw. Yeah, very impressive, dude. That's nuts. At what body weight?
Thank you. 186.
That's awesome, dude. That's really awesome.
Appreciate it.
What's your best deadlift and squat so far?
Squat, I couldn't tell you. It's been too long.
Okay.
Deadlift, I did a 565 sumo
Okay.
and a 585 hitched. And then I did a 600 low handle trap bar deadlift.
Okay. Nice. And what about you, Jeff? Is it going to be? I guess you're going to have strength and physique goals.
Yeah, slightly under those a little bit. Actually, so I posted a squat yesterday. It was 130 kilos, so 286 pounds. Paused for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 seconds, and then asked to grass. And for me, that's a good performance. Like that's definitely good progress, especially with that range of motion, with my hip issues. And someone DM'd me asking why I was so pathetically weak. I think it was a language barrier thing. Like they didn't mean to be a dick. That's how it came off for sure. And like, my level of strength is just sort of not what most people expect, I guess. Like my bench is, today I'm starting spoto presses because I think that'll help. Oh, actually, this is a kind of ridiculous story, kind of embarrassing for me, but also kind of relevant. The other day, a trainer was bench pressing on the same bench press that I've been using for the past 3 or 4 months. And, he would do bench presses and look kind of uncomfortable. And then he looked under a side of the bench, and there was something jammed under the bench, and it was uneven.
Mm.
And so that explains why my fucking left shoulder has been hurting for the past while. And why whenever I unrack more than like 2 plates, it feels like death. Like just unracking it has just felt like horribly unstable. And like I'll be moving sideways on the bench and shit like that. And it was just because someone had shoved something under the bench, and it was like hidden under something, so I couldn't see it. But I just like thought, okay, well, this is, I don't know, something feels weird, but it's always felt weird because I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And so, we figured that shit out. So today I was doing spoto presses. I did 5 sets of 5 with 90 kilos, 200-ish pounds, and then 3 sets of 10 with 80, so 176 pounds. And it felt really, really good. Like it actually felt stable for once.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm actually surprised my bench has been going up when I've been dealing with that shit unknowingly.
Yeah.
And it felt so like I just unracking the bar, and it was like, oh my God, it's not, but like it's actually, I can actually control it, and I don't have to shift sideways on the bench. So that's actually.
And you have well, I was gonna say you have no intent to cut, but I think I saw you say that you don't like to be so bulked up for summer. So maybe you would be cutting.
Probably main gaining. I think I'm gonna be main gaining actually, and I know that I know that sounds ridiculous given the circumstances, but
yeah,
when you're bulked up, you can main gain. like you can get away with that. It's a trouble
More
when
like,
people
sure.
cut down and then
Yeah.
they try to maintain and it just
Yep.
doesn't work because they're in a dieted state. But when you're at your fluffiest, you can maintain just fine, or even recomp. Like I know, Alex, you've talked about recomping when in bear mode, and it's almost effortless. Like
It's a
you
lot
don't have to
easier.
think about food. You just eat whatever you want, and you trade fat for muscle, and you just have enough energy to train really, really hard. And so I'll probably float around 96 to 98, 99 kilos. So like 215, maybe up to 220.
Yeah.
And, I'm very unfood focused. Appetite is normal, low. And, if I don't focus on food, I'll actually end up losing weight, and leaning out. So,
Nice.
I'm in a pretty good spot as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it's amazing how much the food focus changes because so I've been on like a number of cruises, and when my first few of them, I would diet down like until the day of the cruise. And I don't know if you guys have been on them, but it's like unlimited food all the time. I mean, it's just ridiculous amount. And I've gained literally like 10 to 15 pounds per cruise because it's like, oh, all of a sudden cuts over, like, and the last one I went on was in 2019. So like right before the pandemic. And I went on like not fat, but just like normal. Like I was like 202 or something. And I to be clear, I was eating as much as I wanted. It's just that what you want is a lot less when you're heavy. So I left the cruise at the exact same weight. I maybe gained like a pound, and I didn't even think about it. So, I have a probably potentially one this coming summer, depending on how, the world is. And I don't even plan to cut for it because it's like, who am I cutting for? And I'm just going to rebound. So it's like, but again, I'm not trying to say be sloppy, but.
Yeah, no, it's amazing
being
how
realistic.
how most men will regulate down to like mid-teens to low teens to high teens, like
Just kind of automatically.
18%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Into that
And
area.
I find when you come back from a cut, most people are going to rebound, but their new set point is going to be lower than when they were bulked, and they can actually maintain that a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting because I grew up as a fat kid. I mean, I don't know if you ever look on my Instagram page, there's a picture of my back like now and then compared to when I was like 12. And I mean, I had love handles for days. Like I was like, I wasn't obese, but I was a fat kid. And honestly, at this point, it's hard for me to maintain above 200 pounds with healthy food. Like it's my like natural weight at this point would be 190, 13% or something like that. And I have to like be cognizant to gain more than that. And you wouldn't think that looking at like how I grew up and everything,
Yeah, but also you've been in this for a long time now, and you
Mhm.
developed all the habits that are going to make you leaner for life. You know how to eat correctly.
Mhm.
You train hard, so your total daily energy expenditure is a lot higher. That's the beauty too, right? When you're jacked, you can eat a lot more compared to a sedentary person.
Yeah.
And you went through puberty, of course.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Sorry, my experience is the same. Like, if you have like a sedentary person, to them calories are always the enemy.
Yes.
Like they're always like, they hear calories and they're just like, oh, this is bad, this is negative. You want to reduce them. You want to go for low calorie density foods, etc. But like when you are very active, when you get some muscle mass, when you've been training hard, you're putting in decent volume in the gym, like you can actually eat a lot to the point where calories, your view of what a calorie is and what food is completely different.
Yeah, totally. So, guys, I thought this was an awesome discussion. Definitely love to get both of you back on for another roundtable in the future. And I'm sure people are going to like this one. So, Jeff, we'll start with you. Where can people find more of your stuff?
Okay, so yeah, it's on Instagram. I think it's just Geoffrey Verity Schofield, GeoffreyV, and then it'll autocomplete, hopefully.
Yeah, right.
And then same thing on YouTube, probably same thing on Quora, everywhere. Yeah.
All right. How about you, Alex?
First of all, it was lots of fun, and let's do this again. People can find me on the AlphaDestiny YouTube channel or my Instagram at @outalpha, or just my name, Alex Leonidas.
Great. Thanks again, guys.
Peace.